Hi, friends. So I went to grad school at UC Berkeley in California, and I really didn't like living there. And when I left, I swore I would never live in California again. I was like, maybe I'll never even go back to California. Anyway, hello from Sacramento, California, where I live, and I love it. Welcome to the good world.
1, 2, 3.
So come on in to a place that is fine. I'll be your friend and you can be mine. The world is a stream of constant bullshit, but that doesn't mean there's not a whole lot of good shit. You start with the mean and we can make something different. Let's build a world that is good.
This is a show for adults. Hi, friends. Welcome to the good world. I am Brother Seth. I am delighted to have you here. I'm going to try to keep this one a little short today. I got a lot of things going on. Last week, I worked with a local interfaith social justice organization called Sacramento ACT. SAC ACT stands for Sacramento Area Congregations Together, and so it's a bunch of different congregations. And as we did last month, we did a vigil outside the building where ICE is detaining people in downtown Sacramento. And I wanted to share something that came up in this conversation, or in the course of planning this, I should say. So I was talking to one of the ministers who spoke. His name is George Dominguez. He's the pastor at The Table in Sacramento, which is I believe, Methodist congregation. And George is wonderful. I adore him. He's great. He has spoken at both of our vigils so far. And the first one, he was pretty active in the planning. And the second one, he was a little less active because he has had a lot of things going on, and that happens. People have a lot of things going on. And so he and I were talking afterwards, and he said, I'm sorry that I haven't been able to be as involved in this. And I said, well, here's how I think of it. So a couple of years ago, one of my favorite teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk who I've talked about here any number of times, he died. And his funeral was broadcast on YouTube. And so I was watching his funeral, and they brought his body from the temple to wherever they did the cremation. I'm not entirely sure where that was, but somewhere in Hue, Vietnam. And the distance between the temple and the cremation site was far. It was not a short walk. And there were all of these people who had to carry not just the body, but the coffin that it was in. And it's a heavy thing, right? Requires several people to carry. And I said, I was telling Reverend George that I remember watching this and noticing people would carry the coffin, and then after 5 minutes or so, the people who were carrying, everyone would stop, and the people who were carrying the coffin would put it down, and they would step away, and some other people would step in, and they'd pick up the coffin, and it would keep going. And a relay race is also an appropriate metaphor, but I kind of like this one more because it's a team effort. Every part of it is a team effort, right? In a relay race, every leg is one individual. But in this story with the journey to the funeral pyre, every step of it, multiple people are working together on something. And also every step, some people are taking a break. And I think as we think about how to build a better society and how to envision what this world can look like, it is important to keep this idea in mind that none of us can or should be doing everything all the time. All of us need space to take a break. We all need to work together when we're working together. And when we need a break, we can let someone else step in and do the work. And that is good for everyone. And that is part of what I call the good world. It's part of this vision for a better society, is one where everyone contributes when they can and everyone sort of takes a break when they need it. And we're all good with that, right? And that's part of the deal, is that we support each other and we say, hey, you need a break? I'll step in. I'll pick it up here. Okay, I'm good. Hey, I've been going for a while. I think I need a break. You can step back in. That is part of the deal. And it's not a transactional thing. It's not I'm doing this because you did it and I feel obligated. It's a this is a society where we support each other belief, where we are working together to accomplish things, and where we are supporting each other in doing that. And we are also recognizing that we're all human beings who have needs. And if we're just burning ourselves to the bone constantly, then we're going to run out of energy, and ultimately the work is going to suffer for it. And so that is the thing that I've had in my mind lately that I really wanted to share today. I've also been thinking about it in the context of doing this show, and I'm not about to stop doing the show. At least I have no plans anytime immediately to stop doing the show. It is the fact that it is a thing that I spend all of my time, not all of my time, but all of the work that goes into it pretty much is me, other than when I have guests on, they are also doing some work by sitting here with me and having a conversation. But most of the work that goes into this is just me sitting alone at a computer. And that's part of why I've started to try to do more guest episodes, is because I enjoy that interaction and I enjoy that collaboration. And to me, that is an important part of that work, right? These vigils that I've been helping to organize, I have not been doing them on my own. I have been a part of sort of the small group that has taken a lead on the last two. For the first one, it was me and one other person. For the second one, it was me and two other people. And then there's also a larger group that comes together that's like 7 or 8 people. And the larger group comes together and sort of talks about things. And then the smaller group goes off and sort of does a lot of work before the next meeting. But all of these things it all requires people coming together and working together and collaborating. And that is where a lot of the joy is for me. That's where I find the deepest connection to my fellow human beings, and that's where I find the deepest connection to the world around me. Now, to be clear, that's not going to be the case for everyone, right? Someone, I don't know, J.D. Salinger comes to mind, right? He was a writer and a hermit, and he didn't want to be around people, and that's okay. There are times that I don't want to be around people. There are lots of times I don't want to be around people. And I find a lot of restorative power in being alone in nature or being alone wherever. But when I am doing work, I generally prefer to be doing work with other people. That's where I find a lot of joy personally. And so that is a challenge that I am having as I continue making these episodes. And it's interesting. I think my most viewed episode is one I did last year where I had guests scheduled and they had to cancel last minute. We had to reschedule. And I was like, well, I still need to record something because I've got myself on this schedule. And part of the challenge is, even when you don't really want to do the thing, being like, well, this is longer term, I want to be doing this. And so part of what that means is on days where I'm encountering a little bit of resistance, still going ahead and doing it. And that is something that I have been encountering today. This is a big part of how I ended up starting out by talking about this and talking about the idea of, we're picking each other up, is that I did not get a lot of sleep last night because at 4 a.m. I woke up and one of our dogs, Pulpo, I'll put a little picture of him here. He's a very sweet dog. Our dogs are Charlie, pictured here, and Pulpo, pictured here. Charlie is old, Pulpo is young. Also, if you don't speak Spanish, Pulpo, which is the closest I can get to a proper pronunciation, means octopus. His name at the shelter was Octopus, and we decided that we liked it, but it was kind of cuter to make it Pulpo, and it actually works very well because he has many tentaculos, many tentacles, legs. He only has 4 of them, but like when he runs, they're all going in different directions, and so it looks like he has many. And also sometimes he will jump on the bed and he will drape all of his legs on top of us, and it's very, very sweet, but also it wakes us up. And so last night he woke me up at 4 a.m. I woke up and his little head was on my tummy and he was fast asleep, and it was incredibly sweet. But then I couldn't fall asleep after that, and I don't usually get up at 4 a.m. And so I'm a little tired today. That's one source of resistance that I've been encountering. And then also I took the dogs for a walk this morning, and Pulpo really likes to dig for gophers, and it's especially right now is a good time to dig for gophers because it has been raining. And generally, I will let him dig a bit, but I don't want him to dig too much because I don't want him to actually catch a gopher. It tires him out when he smells them and digs a bit, and it's sort of a public space with lots of gopher holes, so there are plenty of places for him to dig, and it's not an area where a lot of people are walking, so it's not like dangerous for him to be digging. And so generally, as long as I can move him along, I give him like a couple of minutes per hole, and then and he gets a lot of energy out, and then I move him along before he can actually harm a living creature. But today I sort of spaced out a little bit, and I looked down, and there were the hind legs of a gopher starting to stick out of this hole, and I realized, oh shit, my dog is about to kill this gopher. And so I pulled him away, And I was able to get him away, and we walked away, and the gopher, I think, is alive. If not, it was not Pulpo's doing. Pulpo. And we walked away, and then he really wanted to go back for the gopher, and I was pulling on him, and he managed to get out of his harness and ran away towards the gopher. Fortunately, did not get to it, and I sort of shouted his name, and he turned around and he was like, "Oh, I'm far away," which he doesn't generally like to be. And I held out some treats, and he came running back, and so it was fine. I put the harness back on him. But anyway, I was very tired. I'm very tired today, so I've been encountering all of this resistance. And so resistance is once again a thing that I'm talking about. And I'm using the word resistance in part as a reference to, this is something that I talked about in the episode I mentioned earlier. It's also something that I talked about when I had my friends Lance Rubin and Naomi Ekperigan on the show. Lance is a big fan of a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, who is best known for writing The Legend of Bagger Vance, the book, and maybe also the screenplay, but definitely the novel. And he's written many other things. And in this book, The War of Art, he talks about the challenge of you're going to encounter resistance, and resistance is very clever. Resistance will tell you, hey, you're tired, you deserve a break. And I want to be clear, people deserve a break, right? That's what I started out by saying. We deserve a break. But it is also the case that when you are committed to a certain project, it is important to sit and recognize, like, I do deserve a break, but also, do I need to take this break at this moment? Is this actually something where I'm just trying, is this just resistance, right? Is it a genuine need for a break, or is it resistance? And that's a tough thing to discern. And that is something that ultimately, like, we all have to sort of do our own work on that. But for me, in this moment, I'm like, well, I really want to be making this show. And I know that part of that is I'm trying to do this routine where I put up a video every Wednesday. And I'm trying to keep that going, because otherwise I lose momentum. And the last time I lost momentum, I didn't make a new episode for 6 months, 8 months, a long time. And so I'm trying to just keep things going. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it. This is not, I need a vacation from doing this. This is just, I'm like feeling a little tired and I don't wanna. It's just I don't wanna. And so I am overcoming my I don't wanna by saying I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna record it. It's gonna be like a little shorter, I think, than some of my previous ones. But that's okay. Short can be lovely. And so there's a hummingbird. If you watched last week's episode, you know that I get very distracted, not in a bad way, when I see hummingbirds outside my window, because they're just incredible creatures. God, I love them. Hummingbirds are great. There are hummingbirds. I don't think I mentioned this in last week's episode, but there are hummingbirds in the opening theme song animation sequence. I'll put a little still from it right here. And I will also take this moment to, as I often do, plug the artwork of Deborah Pinkney, who is the animator who I worked with to make that theme song. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be right back to talk about other stuff.
Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe.
Yes, friends, that little 4-part harmony is a reminder to you to please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this with your friends, put it out into the world, help me get this out into the world. Go to my Patreon and support me if you like, or go to my store and get some merch. Here's a mug with my face on it. This past week, I had an audition for an acapella group, which is something I have not done since high school. And Emily Perez, who was on this show a couple of weeks ago, who is the co-founder of the Sacramento Pop Choir, she is also the co-founder of this a cappella group. And so my meeting was with her and Alan, who's the other co-founder of the a cappella group. And we were meeting at Emily's office. And anytime a guest comes on this show, I send them, they get to choose the color of the mug, but I send them a mug with my face on it. Hummingbird is back. It's so cool. They just hover. So I went to Emily's office, and Alan was the first one there, and I got there right after him. And so it was just the two of us, and there are some mugs sort of in the corner of the room because it's an office and people drink coffee. And I went over, I was like, and this was my first time meeting Alan, and I was like, that's my face. And I think at first he thought, you're saying that looks like you, and that's funny. And I was like, no, that's my face. That's literally a drawing of me. And that is also a drawing of me on this side. And this mug, not this mug. Emily's mug is in pink because Emily is a big fan of pink. But I was like, this mug is from my podcast. And then anyway, Alan and I started talking. The audition was fun. Singing with other people is great. It's such a great experience. Even if I spent a lot of time growing up. I was in, I think, 3 acapella groups in high school. Depending on one of them, I don't think we ever performed. I was in 2 that performed pretty regularly, plus Glee Club, plus I did musicals. So I did a lot of singing with other people growing up. But even if you didn't do that, there are people in the Sacramento Pop Choir, and this is something that I talked about with Emily. There are people in the pop choir who have zero experience singing in front of anyone, singing with anyone. And it's a really delightful and powerful experience. So I will encourage people to do that. Anyway, you can go to my merch store. You can get yourself a mug. When I'm tired and encountering resistance is also when my brain is sort of at its most like, ooh, I will seize on everything. You can get a shirt like this shirt. You can get, there's other stuff. Also, I don't know if you have an idea for a piece of merch that I don't sell and you would like to have me sell one and make it, let me know. You can put that in the comments. Put things in the comments. Also, I think usually I'm always like, hey, like and subscribe. Comment if you're here and you have an opinion. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you would like to hear me talk about, frankly. Because a lot of times I just sit down and I'm like, I mean, this episode is a good example. Sometimes, even if I come in with kind of a plan, puberty voice. Sometimes even if I come in with part of a plan, my brain just takes me in a direction. So if you have an idea of something you would like me to at least start with, and I can't promise that I'll stay on that topic the whole time, but you can share that in the comments too. And if you would like me to add some kind of merch, let me know. Reverend Susie, who was on last week, Reverend Susie Idzik, had actually asked me to start making a hoodie instead of just t-shirts. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty easy to do. So I went onto Printful, which is the service that I use for it. Also, I don't know a lot about these different services. I just like the particular, they have Bella and Canvas is one of their brands, and the shirts are very soft. And I really like soft fabrics because I'm a tender little soul. But anyway, Susie asked me for, Reverend Susie, not my spouse. Reverend Susie asked me for a hoodie, so I made a hoodie, and now they have a hoodie and I have a hoodie, and there are hoodies there. So if you want, decorative dinner plates, I can make you decorative dinner plates. That would be pretty niche. I'm not gonna do that without someone asking for it, I think. And preferably you strongly suggesting that you will buy it and not just messing with me. I could make dinner plates, whatever. If you have a piece of merch that you would like, you can request it in the comments, and I will see to it. I will make it happen, my friends. Also, there's stickers. The stickers are fun. Lots of things on the store. So the thing that I came in intending to talk about today, which I'm like most of the way through this episode and I have not talked about it, but that's fine. It's something I could talk about for a long time. I'll just touch on it now because in the cold open, I mentioned that the first time I lived in California, I did not like living in California. And I specifically didn't like living in Berkeley. And there are a number of reasons for that. I liked the school. I loved my classmates. I loved my professors. Specifically where I lived in the city of Berkeley was particularly challenging. But I just encountered a lot of people who were very, very nosy. And had sort of a smug superiority in their nosiness. There was a lot of like, actually, you should be doing this. Like you get, just imagine walking down the street, minding your own business, and a total stranger comes up to you and actuallys you. That happened all the time in my day-to-day life. And so I was like, this is terrible. California is terrible. And so I swore I would never live here again because I thought it was the whole state. And then Susie, my spouse, and I met, and I went, she's from Santa Cruz. And so the first time we went to California, I was like, oh, I see. It's a whole big state with lots of different parts to it. And I don't have to let my negative experience with one part of it color the entire thing. That's a useful lesson for all of us. Just, we don't have to let our negative experiences with something tarnish the entire category that thing belongs to. If you have a negative experience with one type of person, you don't need to hold it against every other person who fits into that category. You certainly don't need to hold it against all of humanity. It is good to protect yourself, but I think also part of protecting yourself means letting yourself be vulnerable when you feel safe to do it, and finding people with whom you can be safe to do it. So, or you can be like me and be vulnerable on the internet and hope that strangers don't come into your comments and say mean things about you. I'm at a place where I'm pretty good, so if they say mean things about me, I can probably mostly blow it off, but no one enjoys that. So California, I now live here. I love living here. And the thing that I specifically wanted to touch on, people think of California, or at least I should say I grew up in the New York suburbs, right? I grew up on the East Coast. Most of my life I lived on the East Coast. And so when I thought of California, I thought Los Angeles, I thought San Francisco, and I had sort of a vague sense of there's wine, and I know there's nature and beaches and stuff, but mostly what you think of when you think of California, if you grow up on the East Coast as I did, or look, maybe your experience is different from mine, but the way that I thought about California was really limited to the two biggest cities. And with sort of an awareness of San Diego, because I'm a sports fan. And so it was also San Diego Padres, but I knew that was near LA. And the Sacramento Kings exist. I had no idea where in California Sacramento was until I looked at living here. But so you have this idea of California in your head, and people tend to refer to Sacramento as Northern California. I think I talked about this recently. Sacramento is barely north of halfway up California. There's many, many more hours if you keep going north from here. But California is so much more than its biggest cities. And even if you want to pick, let's say, the Redwoods, which are incredible, California nature is so much more than the Redwoods. And I love the Redwoods. That is not me saying anything negative about the Redwoods. But there is also, if we're just talking about trees, if we're even just talking about superlative trees, and superlative means, most, biggest, whatever, or it can also mean smallest or least, but superlative is something that is at the end of a spectrum, right? But if we're just talking about superlative trees, California has the tallest known tree in the world, probably tallest tree in the world, because the tallest known tree is there are not trees that are taller than California redwoods. I think we would know if there were trees that are taller than California redwoods, even in the places that are really hard to explore. That feels like a thing that would stick out on satellite maps and stuff like that. So there may be specific trees that are taller than the tallest known tree, which is called Hyperion, which is up in the redwood forest along the northern coast. I'll put that on a map. You can see where that is on a map. And so California has the tallest tree in the world. California also has the largest known tree in the world by volume, which is not a redwood, but a sequoia, which are their relatives, but they're different species. The giant redwoods are along the coast. The giant sequoias are inland. They're up in the foothills and into the Sierra Mountains. And so California also has the largest tree by volume. It is not quite as tall as the redwoods. The sequoias are also very, very tall, but they are not quite as tall. They are, however, massive. They are bigger. Their trunks are wider. And so by volume, more puberty voice. By volume, they are they are bigger than any other tree. So California has the tallest tree in the world and the biggest tree in the world by volume. And they are not just different trees, they are different species of trees in completely different parts of the state. California also has, this one is a little less certain because it's harder to say for sure. But California is believed by some to have the oldest tree in the world, which I believe is called Methuselah, which is a bristlecone pine, which is not super far from where the sequoias are, but they're on the other side of the mountains towards Nevada and the Great Basin and that stuff, Eastern Sierra. So California, tallest tree, biggest tree by volume, oldest tree, possibly. 3 completely different species, and the bristlecone pine especially is a really, really different species from the other 2. Also, different parts of the state, different ecosystems. And so I say that less to be like California has the biggest and best things, and more to say, think about the biological diversity that a place needs to have the tallest tree, the biggest tree by volume, and the oldest tree in the same state, and they are different species in different parts of the state. And that is just 3 of the many, many different biomes in California. Like, ecologically, California is crazy. I'm realizing this is almost a separate episode from where I started, but this is what I really wanted to talk about today. And then I ended up talking about resistance. That's okay. Sometimes our brains do things like that. California is amazing, and I love it. And I'm going to show you, so here are 2 of my favorite maps. They're from the same company, a company called Mirway. This map it's an elevation map of California. It's a relief map. And so you can see, I'm telling you this because these are things that I did not know before I lived here, and I find them really amazing. So this is a relief map. And so you can see there are these huge mountains, and then there's a big valley in the middle. And there's the bay, and there's, also stuff that is not the Central Valley and also not the big mountains because it's a big state with a lot of biodiversity and topographical diversity. But the main super dominant features are the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and then also the coastal mountains, and then the giant valley in the middle. The Central Valley, of which the Sacramento Valley where I live is part of it. Now here is the other map that I really like. This is a hydrological map. So this is roughly showing the water of California. And so you can see when you put these 2 maps next to each other, the way that these 2 phenomena interact with each other, the way that these mountains lead to these rivers. And specifically what happens is the moisture comes off the Pacific Ocean. There's a lot of moisture because the Pacific is a big ocean. And the moisture comes in, and first it hits the coasts, and it creates this really, really dense fog. And so San Francisco is very famous for the fog. Santa Cruz, where Susie grew up, also has really, really dense fog. Also, fun story, the fog is really, it gets cold when the fog comes in. And when Susie and I got married, we got married out on the Central Coast, not too far from where she grew up. And we told all of our East Coast friends, yes, this wedding is in August. You should bring layers. You should bring a sweatshirt. You should bring a jacket. You should bring warm clothing because it's going to get cold. We know what you think California is, and we know it's August. It's going to get cold. So just bring layers for when it gets cold. And all of our East Coast friends thought that we were punking them. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay, California, I know, it gets so cold. Ha, 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 you're so funny. They kept saying that. And we said, no, really, it's going to get cold. And they said, oh, yeah, California. And then the day of the wedding arrives. And in the morning and afternoon, I honestly don't remember. I think the ceremony, we've been married over 7 years now. The ceremony was late morning. I want to say started at 11, something like that. Maybe it was early afternoon, midday. Very, very sunny. It was 85 degrees, maybe not quite that warm, but over 80. It was warm. It was sunny. It was hot. And everyone is in, their wedding attire, and all of our friends are like, oh, you said it was going to be cold. I thought you said it was going to be cold. And we said, it is going to be cold. It just hasn't happened yet. And then around 5, 6 o'clock, the fog rolled in and the temperature dropped by about 30 degrees. And all of our East Coast friends went into their rooms. We got married at Costa Noa, which is a really lovely eco resort along the Central Coast. Might as well plug Costa Noa. It's one of my favorite places on the planet, honestly. And part of what was great about it was everyone could stay on site if they wanted to. Some people didn't. And there are different degrees. People could do everything ranging from camping up to they have lodge rooms. And so the fog rolls in, the temperature drops by 30 degrees, and all of our friends who had been making fun of us for telling them it was going to be cold suddenly found themselves really cold, and they didn't bring layers because they didn't believe us. And then they went into their rooms and they got their bathrobes. And so the entire dance party, not everyone, there were plenty of people who were well prepared, but all of the people who weren't, a lot of our wedding pictures involved people dancing in bathrobes, which turned out to be great. It was a lot of fun. But California, so that's one thing that the moisture does, is it creates this dense fog along the West Coast. Then it kind of comes over into the valley, where it can also create a dense fog, especially this time of year in the winter. We get what's called the Thule fog, which is a really, really dense fog, and it is famously difficult to drive in. But most of the time, we don't get a lot of moisture here in the Central Valley. And especially in the summer is really dry. And even when it does rain, when you get moisture, generally what happens is the storm clouds kind of blow quickly over the valley, and then they get caught in the Sierras, which also, the Sierras are all bigger than every mountain on the East Coast. Like, I grew up in the Northeast. Mount Washington is the tallest mountain. No matter where you are crossing through the Sierra Nevada range, you are crossing somewhere that is higher than Mount Washington, the tallest mountain in the eastern half of the U.S. Decent, substantially higher. Most of the passes are at least 8,000 feet. Probably a lot of them are higher than that. So the moisture gets caught up there also, and it rains and snows a lot, which is why Tahoe is ski country, so much so that the Winter Olympics were held there. And so you get all of this moisture that comes down in the mountains there, and it also comes down in the western mountains. So you get all of this moisture, and that ultimately turns into precipitation, whether it's snow or rain. The snow eventually melts. The rain doesn't have to melt because it's already water. And all of that turns into rivers. And so that is why these mountains in this picture create this specific hydrology, and why the water is like this in response to the mountains. And so you get all up and down the state, you get these rivers coming in from the mountains. And this is also why California is an amazing place to grow produce. I have here, this is a passion fruit that we grew in our backyard. It fell off of our passion fruit vine today. Look at it, it's purple. Part of why California's soil, so it's really fertile because millions of years ago it was seafloor, and so lots of plankton and stuff died, and so that has left us with really, really rich soil. But all of that soil is fed by, we have sunshine that is pretty much constant through the growing season, right? We get almost no rain from April, May to October. Sometimes you get sprinkles in there, but for the most part, it's really dry during the summer, and the sun is high and strong, and so plants get all the sunlight they need. The soil is incredibly rich, so plants get all the nutrition they need, and despite the fact that there's not rain coming down from the sky, there is still a lot of moisture coming down from the mountains in the form of rivers. So you still get a lot of water coming through. And that's all the things plants need, right? Plants need good soil, they need sunlight, and they need water. And in the Central Valley of California particularly, you get all of those three things in abundance. And so that's why California is an incredible place to grow things. But also, all of these factors lead to the fact that, these different parts of these mountains at these different heights, and again, these mountains get really, really high. You get all of these different these different biomes, these different ecosystems, and they're all really, really cool. And I haven't even touched on the deserts that are down sort of over, I'll put a little color here, the deserts that are down like Joshua Tree and Death Valley and all of the stuff that's out that way. That's also a really cool ecosystem, and it's completely different from the other ones I've been talking about. And so a thing that I love about California is its biodiversity, and I've also talked about its cultural diversity, and specifically the cultural diversity here in Sacramento. That's a thing I've talked about a number of times. But coming back to a theme that Reverend Susie and I talked about last week, this idea of where are your wows? I find my wows in this incredibly rich diversity, in the biodiversity, in the cultural diversity, in the topographical, and I don't know a lot about geology, but the geological diversity of California is also pretty crazy. Like there's crazy, red stone in some place here. Just to give you an example, here's a picture of the rocks at Joshua Tree. Here's a picture of the rocks at Yosemite. They look different and they're both insane. This is California. California is great, it turns out. I know I'm not supposed to, I think a lot of Californians, and especially Sacramentans are like, don't tell people. Don't tell people how great it is. But it's a big state. There's a lot of room. And it's great here. It's great. The people are great. We went to a political fundraiser last night, and they did an icebreaker that I really liked, which is you get in a group with people you don't know, and you say, I could talk about blank. And it's just things you like about Sacramento. And the idea is you don't talk about it. You just could talk about. And you're just naming things that you love so much you could talk about them extensively. And so in this episode, I have talked extensively about California's biodiversity and all of the incredible nature that we have here. And I've touched a little bit on the cultural diversity here in Sacramento. Though really, I mean, just all of the immigrant communities that are here, it's incredible. From all over the world. There's just so much here, and the people all have their own rich history to share, and I really love that. So I really loved this exercise, this icebreaker and some examples that I gave where I could talk about the people. The people I meet in Sacramento are great. Really, like consistently, the people I meet here are great. The food is great. The cultural diversity. I could talk about the cultural diversity. I could talk about how many things there are to do. I could talk about, I said the food, which is a big category, but like, do I mean the restaurants or do I mean the farmers markets or do I mean my own garden? Because those are different things. Oh, I did also want to share, here's a little video from our garden. We are growing some garlic. Look how happy this garlic is. Also, these things over here are beets and carrots. It's a little hard to tell right now unless you look closely which one is which. The beets have purple stems, but that's kind of tough to do. And we tried to plant them separately. They seem to have ended up a little more mixed than we had intended. I could talk about all of these things. I could talk about California for hours. I did an episode that could have been done, and I kept going because I love talking about California, right? And I love it. And when I lived here the first time, I could have talked about how annoying and frustrating I found the people in the specific place that I lived in California. And now I can talk about so many things that I love about living in California. And so I really just wanted to share that as a thing to share, because a lot of this show is just me sharing things that I like. Right. We're going to wrap up there. It's lunchtime. I'm hungry. It's not lunchtime for you if you're watching or listening to this right when it first came out, but it is lunchtime for me when I am recording it. So there. You were arguing with me. I know you were. You were arguing with me and I won. It's fine. Not everything has to be a competition, especially a made-up argument between me and my viewers. Well, thank you, friends, for your visit today. Now it's time we both go on our way. The world will still be insane tomorrow, but don't let that fill your heart with sorrow. You can thrive in a desert, just ask a saguaro. Please give to my Patreon and buy my merch. Capitalism is fun. Let's build a world that is good. This is a show for adults. Bye, friends. Thank you so much.